Empower Radio presents The Miracle of Healing with Lisa Campion. Meet healers, learn different modalities, and hear empowering stories of people on their healing journey. The Miracle of Healing on Empower Radio. Here's your host, Lisa Campion.
Hey there, I'm Lisa Campion, and this is The Miracle of Healing on Empower Radio, where conscious people come together to explore the world of healing and heal the planet one person at a time. Today, I'm so happy to have one of Empower Radio's own stars, David Franklin Farkas from the Farkas Files. David and I are going to talk about his form of doing healing, house healing. So cool. Welcome, David.
Hey, Lisa. It's always fun to do a show with you.
I know.
Especially on your show.
I know. I've been on your show a ton of times, and it's really fun to have you on my show.
Yeah.
So house healing, right? My show's about healing. You do house healing. Can houses be sick? Like, why does a house need healing?
It's an interesting way to put the question. People often feel there's something wrong or something going on in a house. And it might be paranormal stuff that they're pretty sure there's something or someone there. But often it's much more subtle than that. It just doesn't feel right. We can't sleep. Since this happened, the kids are upset. It's that kind of more subtle, emotional, and physical stuff. And the range of things that could be affecting the way people feel in the house is really pretty broad. You know, a lot of what I do, or how I started out doing this, was houses that were for sale that weren't selling. Mm. And there's a name for that. In the real estate market, what they call houses that have some known problem, typically something historic that happened in the past, or, a murder happened there, or a suicide, or it's reputed to be the local haunted house. They call those stigmatized properties. Mm. And the way they behave in the market is they take a long time to sell, and the price keeps dropping until the house sells.
Right.
So what I've come to realize is that any house for sale that is behaving that way, that mysteriously is not getting seen, or people come in, say, yeah, great house, but pick on whatever it is that they can pick on so they can leave. When that stuff is happening, they're feeling something they can't put into words. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like home.
Right.
And the stuff that I clear is that stuff that people can't put into words. Mm. Is that very, very subtle stuff. And that makes a big difference in terms of houses selling, or when someone moves into a new house that's had several previous owners, whether or not there was anything terrible that happened there. All of the emotions, and, we call it emotional baggage, and it's true. People don't take their emotional baggage with them. It's still there, implanted in the energy matrix of the house. So cleaning stuff up for sale is a good idea. Cleaning stuff up when you move into a new place is a good idea. If a business for some reason suddenly if a business moves from one location to another and suddenly it's not working anymore, that's a pretty good indication that it's the new location that had some effect on it. And similarly, if, the family was doing fine, or the couple was doing fine, and they moved to a new place, and suddenly there's all kinds of turmoil, it's like, well, maybe it's the struggles of the move and whatnot, but maybe it's the place. So
it could be anything from like leftover emotional energy, like it's called we call residual energy, right? That's could be that. It could be an actual haunting, and there's like a million different kinds of hauntings. It could really be lots of different things that
could be lots and lots of different things. The planet has an energy matrix on its surface that are called ley lines. It's a lot like the energy meridians that Chinese medicine has mapped out in the human body. There's something similar on the surface of the planet. And those have their own geometry, but they're also affected by interactions with human beings over time. And so things could either be distorted in the ley lines, or the ley lines could be connected to some place that's a problem. So if you happen to live on a ley line that goes through a cemetery, that often can be a little strange.
You get a little ghost highway there, right?
Yeah. And if you look at it as who's here, it's different folks every time. So you have to solve the problem of disconnecting that ley line from the cemetery so they're not coming over. So ley lines are one issue. Where the ley lines cross, it creates a vortex, which is not necessarily bad, but it's a high energy spot. So if it's a negative vortex, it can be depressing, but even if it's a positive vortex, it's really hard to sleep there.
Right. Just psychically active.
Right. So if you happen to have your bed directly in the middle of a vortex, that's something that also can be a problem. And then people think of personalities as being ghosts, as, folks who died and didn't cross over. And one of the things I always like to mention when we talk about this stuff is I did a lot of reading of people from all over the world to see what does everybody say about ghosts. And one of the things that came up over and over again was that 80 to 90% of ghosts have no idea they're dead. Mm-hmm. So when people say, well, why is all this ghost? They're just confused. They're just people that are confused. Nothing's working for them. So ghosts are one possibility, people who died and didn't cross over. But there's a whole range of other intelligences that could be affecting things. So there are intelligences of nature, all the fairy tale characters that everyone goes, oh, that's cute. It's like, well, fairies are real, elves are real, dragons are real, trolls. There's all kinds of things that could be there for their own reasons, and it might be that they're trying to help.
And when you say they're real, you're talking more about them like interdimensionally, like they're just slightly in a separate dimension from where we are, right?
Right. They're in a slightly different dimension. The stories in a lot of cultures are that the little people in particular, and, there are little people stories all over the world, leprechauns in Ireland, fairies in England. I forget what the ones in Iceland are called. So they are like human beings are, culturally different and have different behaviors and do different things. But they're everywhere. And the story is always, well, they used to be physical, but when humans started to really take over the planet, humans are so dangerous that the little people decided to pull it out of the physical world. Mm. And that's a really interesting thing to hear.
Makes kind of sense, doesn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So there is a sense that some of them can, by choice, either make themselves seen or become physical. And that's the whole thing with Sasquatch. Is probably a multidimensional that shows up some of the time and is not there the rest of the time. And you see him now and don't see him a second later because...
That's why you don't find a body. That's why they don't find like dead Sasquatches, like corpses around.
Right, because they're in another dimension. They just are in this dimension some of the time. Mm-hmm. So there's a wide range of that stuff. And, people say, well, do you believe in that? I'm like, when the same thing is said for thousands of years all over the planet, you start having to say, there's got to be something to this. And then I run into them doing my work. So there's one of the Christmas movies, there's a line that says, I'm your worst problem, an elf with attitude. When I met elves, they all had attitude. They were really something. They were in my face. So the reputation is well deserved. The stories fit who I meet when I do my work.
And how would like a person that's not you, that's just like a regular person living in a house, how would they encounter those beings?
Well, fairies are tricksters and may move stuff, or especially shiny objects, or do something else to try and get attention, but not really show themselves. They play games with people. And they're the ones that the nature spirits that most commonly people would run into. But a lot of it is just a sense of a feeling that someone's there, but you can't see them. Mm. You know, it's like, what? What's it? Huh? That kind of stuff. And there are certain places, you know, for example, very old buildings with stone foundations, especially if they have waterworks and other big machinery and things like the old mill buildings here in New England, frequently have trolls because they're the guardians of earth and stone, and they are there to keep it all solid and substantial and working. And then something changes, but they're working on geological time. So if we change something quickly, they don't get it. Their job is to keep it the way it was.
Right.
So, you know, the interaction is between the troll who is very confused about what's changing and somebody who doesn't even believe in trolls. So,
yeah, there's almost everybody.
Which is usually the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is usually the problem. You know, it's like something's going on here, and they start figuring out what it is, and then they go, "No, that couldn't be."
Yeah, I know.
Ghosts aren't real.
It's so funny when you deal like I have the same experience too. You know, like you being a psychic and all of that. There's sort of this weird edge. It's like where people are experiencing really strange things and still refuse to believe. It's sort of like the shark biting your leg, and you know, and you're like, I don't believe in sharks, you know.
Right.
But you know, it's a lot of people don't have a context for that, or they're just, it's not within their framework to believe in these, you know, things that exist alongside of us, whether they're the elemental spirits of the earth, like you're talking about, or human spirits that are stuck, or there's sort of a whole variety of non-human, shadowy, you know, spirits that sometimes take up residence in people's houses too.
Right.
That are, you know, entities, demons, or whatever. Astral entities, whatever you want to call them. Right?
Yeah, the dark stuff and demons is a word that is used all over the world, but it has all kinds of religious connotations that make it creepier, I think, than it really is. I consider them opportunistic parasites that feed on all of the negative, bad stuff, the stuff that doesn't work, the stuff that hurts people, that human beings do. So I find them in places where there's been some kind of violence. I find them in places where someone has had a struggle with drug addiction. And the demons love that, and they want to keep it going because that's what they feed on. So they will just keep things going so they continue to be a mess. But the ominous sense that most people have of them is not true of the ones that you run across in a typical house. Mm. They're just there because, you know, your kids' friends were doing dope, or there's a group that was in a gang, or
somebody played with a Ouija board.
Ouija boards could go either way. It could be ghosts or demons, but really bad idea.
Yeah.
And the reason Ouija boards are a bad idea is that they work. It will open it will open a portal, but you don't know where it's going to. And whoever shows up goes, oh, they don't have any idea what's going on. Let's play with them.
I always think that there's a lot of like resonance too between like the family and the house. So, I did house clearing for years. God bless you. I gave it up. I don't know why. It just started to bother me, so I gave it up. But I would, the sad family would move into the sad house, and then all of the sad ghosts in the neighborhood would come around, and I would go over there with my friends, and we'd clear the house. We'd clear out all the sad energy, stuck energy. We clear out the sad ghosts, and then the sad family would move right back in again. And I'd be like, You stay out of that house. I just cleaned that house. And then a year down the road, it's all back where it was.
Right. And anytime you hear that repeating pattern, there's a pretty good sense that somewhere back in the timeline, there was some major event with that emotion that set the nature of that energy. So it's not uncommon for people to move into a place that has always had a couple of divorces, and they laugh it off, and then they get divorced.
Right.
Which is a striking one, but it's one that I've heard of.
I totally believe you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or some other struggle, kids getting in trouble, or arguing in the family, or any number of other things. And when here in New England, where the houses can be from the 17 or 1800s, you can have something going on that was from the original settlers or from the tribe that was there before the settlers. Because it's all the same land, and something with a lot of energy set the energy. And as you mentioned, people who resonate with it show up there and build on it over time. So,
and what about like the classic haunting? Like everybody loves a haunted house story. Well, I love a haunted house story. And what about sort of the classic haunting? Like how common is that? Is it rare? Is it common?
When people, especially indigo kids, will say, I saw a ghost. Mommy, can you get your friend to clean it all up? And the first thing I say is, that is an extremely rare experience. And if you can get down off the being creeped out by it and get excited that you just had something happen that most people will never have happened in their lives. It's really pretty cool. There are places where it's easier to see them. And if you get the combination of somebody who is sensitive in a place where, for whatever energetic dynamics, it's easier to see the ghosts at the right moment in, the lunar cycle and all the other things that affect it. There are places where it's easier to see them. But in general, not so much. And mostly the ghosts that are going to be in a house won't interact with the people at all in a really observable way. It'll just be that something feels wrong.
Right.
And then I do the reading on the house and go, yeah, well, we've got this. And we've got a few demons. So did anybody get into some dark stuff at some point? Was anyone doing drugs? Oh yeah, so-and-so was. And the story unfolds.
And I know it's a little hard for you to explain how you do the healing. And I know you have a lot of like, don't try this at home caveats around how you do the work. But
right.
Can you say anything about how you do it? Because I think it's pretty interesting.
Well, it's a lot of different levels that I look at kind of in sequence. So things like ghosts and demons are kind of the last thing on the list that I clear. The first thing I'll look at is the ley lines and vortexes and stabilizing and mitigating that stuff. Underground water and taking care of those issues. Then I have a way of clearing out all the old emotional stuff, which I see as a grid, kind of like graph paper made out of light. And that's actually how the nature of reality is described in the Hindu Vedas. is a net of jewels, and I'm seeing something very much like that old historic description. So I have a way that I reset the geometry because there's holes in that net caused by all those old events. And so that gets cleared out, which clears out all the emotional stuff, setting up protection and calling in blessings. And then, the entities that are there are, pretty straightforward. And, if there's a bunch of ghosts, it's like a bus tour, like, okay, everybody go with them. They'll take you where you got to go. Yeah, keep going. So the ones that are more of a confrontation are dark entities that really don't want to leave, and they've got their gig there, and it's good for them, and then they don't want to get chased out, which is the stuff that's more dangerous, and you need to really know what you're doing.
Yeah, I think people get into trouble too these days because there's a lot of TV shows, paranormal TV shows. They've seen ghost hunting TV. I think ghost hunting is quite a dangerous pastime.
Yeah, a lot of the things that investigator groups do make me cringe just from the perspective of somebody who used to be on a rescue squad. I would never go into those buildings without wearing suitable clothing, having appropriate emergency gear, having a connection back to police and EMS and all that. Going into an old building with floors that could fall apart and stairs that could come apart and all the rest of the stuff without even dealing with whatever supernatural stuff is there. And then you add beer. And it's really a nightmare. So yeah, that's a lot of that makes me cringe, and a lot of the things that they talk about on those shows are not accurate. Right. It's been passed around from one to another for a long time, so people think it's the way things really work, and it's not. And so people get in trouble by misunderstanding or using methods that you really need more skill and more psychic ability to use. Yeah,
and I know. And I do. And
well, one of the reasons I work remotely is you can get in so much trouble on site.
Yeah.
So it's less expensive for the client because they don't have to pay me for travel and all that kind of stuff. But from my perspective, if you're going to come after me, you're going to come after me in my nice little protected spot where I'm working. I don't want to be on site.
Right.
It's way too vulnerable. Then the investigators tend to go in there all pumped up and yell at the ghost. I'm like, oh, hell no.
And do you have a really quick story you could share? Something that's happened that is remarkable?
Well, when I was young and foolish, which is redundant, my girlfriend at the time worked at a psych hospital, and they had a nursing strike, and suddenly the place was empty. So we got giddy and decided we were going to clear it. And we went into one room that felt very, very evil. And I literally got knocked across the wall and across the floor, held against the wall and choked. So there's stuff that can happen to you that, most people never have it happen to them. But after it happens once, it's like, oh, yeah.
Wow. Did you bust that ghost, or is it still there?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the gal I was with was very good at what she was doing. So she shifted the energy so I could get away from him, and we took care of it.
And how would people reach you if they want to have their house cleared?
Househealing.com. And there's every conceivable way to get in touch with me. And I offer a 20-minute free phone consultation, and there's a link to do the scheduling for that. So if people are curious and they've got something they want me to take a look at, person, place, situation, business, whatever it happens to be, set up an appointment and let's take a look.
Yeah, and you've cleared my house a ton of times, so I totally recommend it. I think you're the bomb. So it's really great.
He the bomb.
He's the bomb. Yeah. So thank you so much for being with us here tonight. So fun. I'm glad you're here. My
pleasure. Always
if your house is sick, definitely call David. He'll heal your house. Go visit him. And if you have any interest in finding me, you can find me at lisacampion.com. Come on over to my website. I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to check out both David and I have our radio shows are all over Power Radio and are podcasted, so you can get them anytime, anywhere. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you, Lisa. This is fun.
So fun. Thanks.